NVIDIA will now pay you to put a mini AI data center on your house. It looks like a normal AC unit, but inside sits 16 NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs and Dell servers. Rosh says that unit is exploding in Nashville.
Exploding in terms of...
House on fire. All right. Hey everyone, and welcome to Agents Hour. I'm Shane. I'm one of the founders of Mastra. I'm here with Abhi, as always. What's up, dude?
What's up?
Let's get into the news today. Here's a little preview of what we're going to be covering. Some callbacks from last week. We talked about the Pope talking about AI. The Pope released this X post, and it says, artificial intelligences do not undergo experiences, do not possess a body, do not feel joy or pain, do not mature through relationships, and do not know from within what love, work, friendship, or responsibility mean. Nor do they have a moral conscience, since they do not judge good and evil, grasp the ultimate meaning of situations, or bear responsibility for consequences. They may imitate or even simulate, but they do not understand what they produce, for they lack the effective relational and spiritual perspective through which human beings grow in wisdom. For those that don't know, the Pope put out a huge document. I don't remember, it was like a book, basically, around AI. I doubt he wrote all of it himself, but it obviously was well-informed on
What if
writing
he
it.
used AI to write it?
I saw someone joke that said, joke's on you, now all these tokens are going to be consumed summarizing your really long post because no one is going to read that long of a post. I'm assuming that all this stuff is excerpts from it, but definitely caught some attention, got a lot of views. And obviously when you have a very public figure like this speaking out against AI, it's newsworthy. We talked about Kyle Kuzma going on TBPN. Apparently it happened. Did you ever actually watch it?
Yeah, dude. Psychosis is real. He went on it, though. It's a good watch. It's pretty funny if you're deep in this, you know?
Yeah, so you got even NBA stars talking about AI. The Pope,
American
NBA stars.
dynamism. He kept using the word American dynamism. Like, I don't even know what that means, bro. But thanks for coming on.
and Kyle, you're welcome to come on this show.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, open invitation.
I'm a huge fan.
All right, we got to talk about the big announcement. Late last week, Opus 4.8 came out. And so this says, excited to release Opus 4.8 today. We heard your feedback on 4.7 and we made many fixes for 4.8. 4.8 understands his nuances better, feels much more natural to talk to, and is overall a stronger collaborator on everything from coding to knowledge work.
Have you been using it?
I've used it a little bit. My daily driver is still 5.5, but I didn't notice a huge difference. Maybe feels a slight bit upgrade from 4.7. But it's not a huge step change. I don't think they're calling it a big step change, right? But I think everyone was kind of disappointed in the 4.6 to 4.7 jump. And so maybe it feels like maybe people are less disappointed in this jump.
So I've been running a lot of loops with it, using it on like goals and stuff. We have /goal and Mastra. Like, I didn't notice any good or bad improvements. It has changed its tone a bit. It's not as friendly as it was, I think. I tried to get it to curse. It didn't curse this time, so that's interesting. But it's a good model. It's it's good on SWE and everything else. So if you were expecting some great shit, it's not. So, or some great advancement.
Yeah, I think I saw a post online where it said that a bunch of people that this person knows, and they were pretty well respected. I think it was maybe a Dex Horthy or something. Could be misquoting, but basically said that a lot of people that they know that switched to 5.5, went to 4.8 for a while, and they just went back to 5.5 because they didn't notice a significant difference. So I do think it's in the realm of 5.5 capable, but just depends on, what your flavor is. Who do you like to talk to more? This was interesting, though. This is from Swix, and this was a quote from the launch. They have dynamic workflows, and it says developers can update Claude's instructions mid-task without breaking the prompt cache or routing the update through a user turn, which is interesting. Prompt caching is important, and they apparently have some magic going on under the hood where it can even update mid-task and not break the prompt cache.
Yeah, we have something for that this week. Just a little spoiler.
Don't spoil everything,
I'm not going to spoil it yet.
And so there's this new benchmark, DeepSWE, that we talked about last week. So they talked about where Opus 4.8 landed. And if you look, it landed in second place. So it's definitely, better than 4.7, but it's still behind GPT 5.5, and it's at 58%. Of course, this is just one benchmark. I saw some hate on this benchmark, saying that there are some things that don't seem to make sense. Sonnet was ranking below like some way lesser models in certain cases. So you got to take all these benchmarks as this is a new one. It's supposed to represent more real life coding tasks, which I think is good, but it may not be necessarily your experience because in some cases it's how do you talk to the model? How do you interact with it? But I think it is, it's up in the air on how good it is, but it does feel like it's at least a good benchmark to put in the list of benchmarks to check when new models come out.
Yeah, it's almost like you want to take your opinion from how it scores across them and then form your opinion from there.
Yeah. If it's just really good on one benchmark and terrible on all the others, maybe that's not a good model. And then this was speculation. Last week, GPT 5.6 was spotted in Codex backend logs. Was it going to be released? It was not. It did not come out. But there's some speculation that this week could be the week. I did see a post that they were about to release it, but they found some bugs maybe. And so it's coming, I think, but we will probably find out pretty soon. But this was big news. This is from Anthropic. It says Anthropic has confidentially submitted a draft S-1 registration statement to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Pending completion of the SEC review, this gives us the option to pursue an initial public offering. So Anthropic's probably going public, and they're probably going to do it before OpenAI.
Unless OpenAI now has to confidentially submit their S-1 as well.
And then they try to speed run each other, see who can get there first.
Yeah. I wonder, OpenAI has been prepping for this for a while, so maybe they already have a bunch of legwork done.
I wonder if OpenAI is more complicated because they had the nonprofit conversion to a for-profit, and they still have a nonprofit that has ownership stake in the for-profit. And
they have legal drama.
Yeah, it's a bunch of legal drama around it. I wonder if that just muddies the water and makes it more complicated. I'm no lawyer. I know very little about bringing a company public, but I got to imagine it doesn't help.
Yeah, I'll make this joke that I made earlier, but it's weird that you say it's confidentially submitted and then you post it on Twitter.
Yeah, Anthropic has confidentially submitted, except we're going to post about it.
Yeah. Do you think you'll buy on IPO day?
Not financial advice.
Not financial advice.
This is not financial advice. I don't know. Probably. Why not?
Yeah.
I'll buy a small portion of a share. I'm not going to, who knows what the share price is.
I really wonder what the IPO price will be. Probably going to be fat.
If you are, an Anthropic employee, this is going to be a big day for you.
Oh, for sure.
Especially if you've been there for more than a year.
There's so many jokes going on today about how the SF real estate market is about to collapse. In terms of not collapse, but go upward. And all these Anthropic people, there we are. I guess we can just talk about this right now.
Let's talk about it.
All right. So this is so funny because, so first off, SF real estate is super expensive. It actually took a dip during COVID. Pre-AI, it took a dip as well. If you were bought a place in 2023, 2024, you could get SF was never reasonable, but you can get a house. You could buy one. And if you've been saving your whole life, you could buy one. But now we're getting really small homes. For example, in South Dakota, 2,400 square feet, that is child's play, right? These are small homes that are crazy per square footage, right? So this one was $1,200 a square foot. Holy crap, right? And a lot of these are tenancy in common. So you're sharing this apartment building with 3 other people. So you don't even own the building by yourself.
Yeah, or any land around it.
Or any land. And you're paying this much. And this is where it gets funny because in this description, Anthropic or OpenAI stock will be considered as payments. In some ways it makes sense, right? A lot of these people are not liquid. To even qualify for the loan, maybe some people have good credit history, et cetera, but they don't have enough assets to actually, do this. But you could just pay for it in your Anthropic stock and buy it cash, no mortgage.
I don't know how that works because Anthropic was going to, go back on any secondary sales that happened or whatever. So is that even possible? Can I actually, even as an Anthropic employee, it's not liquid stock. But it could be soon, as we just talked about. Now, that becomes even more likely that once it's public and you have that public stock, you can sell that stock or maybe you just transfer that stock over. Anthropic also announced, this was May 28th, we've raised $65 billion in Series H funding at a $965 billion post-money valuation. This investment will help us advance our research and expand our capacity to meet growing demand for Claude. And then this was a funny same day. This is from Polymarket. It says, new, an AI consultant reveals a client accidentally spent $500 million in a single month after failing to set employee limits on Claude usage.
The reason why this is funny is because Anthropic reported their first profitable month. And maybe this is why.
And they got one customer that just so let's walk through, how does this happen? Someone was probably given the job of like, hey, we need to be AI-ified. And they said, okay, we'll use Claude. Sign up for an account. Everyone can sign in and use it. And then people just started using the API credits and just burned $500 million in 1 month. I mean, it must have been a huge, probably Fortune 1000 company, right? To be able to afford this.
And also, I learned last week that, bigger companies, you are like relegated to enterprise plan, which that means for everyone here, that is not max plan usage. That is enterprise API token usage. It kind of makes sense if you're like a company of 10,000 people, everyone burning, like just doing, slop loops, you could like spend money very quickly.
I bet you 95% of that wasn't useful.
No.
Though, because it was probably a bunch of people got access to it for the first time, trying to see what it could do and just having to do random things that, as they figured it out, right? As they kicked the tires, so to speak.
It may not even be Claude Code usage. It could be Cowork slop. It could be Claude Desktop straight up slop, things like that.
Yeah, I bet it was a lot of Claude Cowork.
I wonder if it bankrupted the company.
Yeah, I imagine it didn't, but I bet it hurt. I wonder if they went to Anthropic and asked for like an installment plan. Can we pay you over the course of the next 6 months on this $500 million? Also, that came out last week. This was kind of around the 4.8 timeline. Anthropic says, we're making swift progress on developing these safeguards and expect to be able to bring Mythos class models to all our customers in the coming weeks. So Anthropic shipping might not be done. Maybe there's a new model coming outside of 4.8.
Like, share, and subscribe.
And follow us on X.
And tell your friends.
And their friends.
I mean, we're not begging.
Well, maybe a little bit.
Subscribe to Agents Hour every Monday, noon Pacific.
Let's talk about MiniMax. So MiniMax M3 dropped. So MiniMax M3, the first open weights model to combine 3 frontier capabilities. So coding and agentic frontier, so it scores pretty well on SweBench Pro, Terminal Bench, and a few others. It has sparse attention, so it scales context to 1 million in the context window, and then it's multimodal. You've been playing around with MiniMax M3.
Yeah, I've been daily driving it since we talked to them. In these benchmarks, it's very comparable to 4.7, and I would agree with that. It's really good at coding for how cheap it is. I did like 3 loops last night, cost me $4, and these were like pretty heavy. I will say though, it's very slow. It's so slow that you have to have patience using it. Otherwise, you're going to like lose your mind because you're used to things just going so fast on a frontier model. Maybe a lot of that is because they don't have the same GPU infrastructure we have. Maybe a lot of that is our own application code invalidating the prompt cache a lot. So it's just doing uncached things. But either way, I think it's pretty smart. I'm kind of like becoming an open model maximalist. So if it keeps going on like this, I'm going to start recommending people just use open models for sure.
If you're actually building agents, depending on what your agent is doing, there's a really good chance that an open weight model could fill that void of whatever that agent is doing, especially if it's a scoped task. You probably don't need frontier level intelligence for basic things. It's like triage this issue. Do you need Opus 4.8 or GPT-5.5 to do that? Especially if it's not time bound. If you don't care if it takes 20 seconds or a minute because it's some kind of automated triage task with some level of intelligence, like maybe you should be trying some of these open models, especially when you start to get to cost being a factor. Sometimes folks, you can get away with not caring about cost for a while. You just need to make sure it all works and get the highest quality results possible. And then at some point, there's some kind of a balancing act you do in your head of, I can save this much and maybe lose very little or maybe just a little bit of quality, and that's worth it because it'll save so much money.
Tyler and I have a theory of like this optimal situation with open models, where you use the open model, let's say for a coding task, and you want to run it in a goal. You use the coding model to write all the code, and goals have judges. You use a frontier model to judge each checkpoint of the code. You're going to spend way more tokens writing code than judging code. So there's like a mixed model approach where maybe you want the frontier intelligence to validate and verify things, and then you can have the best of both worlds.
If it's cheap enough, maybe you have MiniMax try it, and you have DeepSeek try it, and then you have Opus 4.8 as your judge. It tells you like, this one's the best path, keep going on that route, and then it gates the quality, right? And then there's like a judge before you even look at it as the human that has said, like, I've gated the quality. I've went back and forth with this lesser powered model, and it now is up to the standard of what we want. Oftentimes when I'm coding, I'm that judge, right? So if you can have a frontier level judge to kind of guide it, you can hopefully, ideally get farther without a human having to interrupt it or look at it. But then you also know that you still have kind of that gatekeeper that doesn't let slop get through the door.
Like Tyler's running Qwen on his gaming PC, and it can write code pretty well. So maybe writing code as a task of the agentic loop can be solved cheaply now instead of Opus writing the code. Maybe you just need Opus or 5.5 to think about stuff. We also signed up for Ali Cloud. So Mastra is going to be using some Chinese models. Let's go.
But speaking of inference and running things locally, NVIDIA dropped a whole bunch of stuff at Computex. So this is from NVIDIA Newsroom's X account. It says, the age of AI needs a new kind of CPU, introducing NVIDIA Vera, the CPU for agents, delivering 80% faster agentic task completion compared with x86 CPUs. Vera is built to power the CPU-intensive work behind modern AI factories, from agentic AI and reinforcement learning to data processing and orchestration. They also announced NVIDIA RTX Spark, a 1 petaflop superchip, the full CUDA and RTX ecosystem, and Windows native agents, a new beginning for personal computers.
Sick.
And then they announced NVIDIA DGX Station for Windows, the world's most powerful desk-side AI supercomputer with Windows powered by NVIDIA GB300. So you can run frontier AI models with up to 1 trillion parameters locally. So when it comes to local coding, you buy one of these suckers and you can just run it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what this is going to cost. It's got to cost tens of thousands of dollars, I would imagine.
If I was a small business, I'd buy it for sure. But imagine if your Claude bill is $25K a month and you're not needing the top intelligence, like you're an accounting firm or something. You could just run one of these. Maybe there's only one workstation, but you could like do a bunch of like SSH into that one from everybody else's computer.
It's like it's going to be this office where there's one office with this computer and you got to rent time to go into the office to use it. It's like the days of like the mainframe computers. But imagine you could just look at what you're spending on all your different coding tools. And if this could do 90% of it, this would pay for itself in a year.
The DGX Spark is about $5,000. So it'll probably come out of the gate pretty expensive.
Producer Jan thinks $100,000. I think that's high. I don't think anyone's going to be able to buy that, but maybe. I don't know.
Damn.
We're going to find out.
It's a company expense, right? We should get one.
For science. Also, they announced NVIDIA Nemotron 3 Ultra, and you can just see the cost curve. More percentage of coding tasks completed for much less cost per task completion for Nemotron 3 Ultra, which is a 550 billion parameter model compared to Kimi K2.6, GLM 5.1, and Qwen 3.5. But if you just look at this curve, even if the models aren't getting smarter, the costs are going down, which means we should be able to find the types of tasks that these agents can do that do provide value and are now in the ballpark of being reasonably priced.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are scared that everything's too expensive. They're not providing enough value. But these cost curves like really make me excited about the future, because even if the models don't get significantly smarter, if the smaller models can start to reach some of the same capabilities, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And then eventually like running it on your own hardware. But we'll have to change how we work with them for sure.
And this was not announced at the conference, but I thought it was pretty funny, so I wanted to include it because there's a whole bunch of conversation that we had internally when we saw this thing. But this says, NVIDIA will now pay you to put a mini AI data center on your house. It looks like a normal AC unit in the yard, but inside sits 16 NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs and Dell servers. A startup called Span builds them. They're backed by NVIDIA. They bolt onto your home, and you get paid for the power and Wi-Fi. So some estimates put that around $1,000 a month in your pocket. Some people like fact check the estimates, and it's maybe not $1,000 a month. And some of them are in credits and all this, right? But ideally, money back in your pocket in some ways, just for the space to rent this box outside. So are we going to be seeing these like AC units of GPUs sitting outside people's houses in the suburbs?
Maybe in the nice neighborhoods, yeah. Once people figure it out. Yeah.
My joke was like, how does someone not know what the hardware is worth, and they just go and steal the GPUs out of this thing? If you were a criminal, there's not a better place to go steal than this, because it's hundreds of thousands of dollars in value sitting in a box outside someone's house.
Yeah, it's like that time when we bought like Darrow and Taufik Starlink, and then people stole it.
Yeah. Does this thing need to be liquid cooled? Does you have to plug in the hose to it? Can it run in hot areas? Can you put it outside, your brother's house in Austin?
It'll melt.
I don't know. What do you think about this long term?
I'd be down to try it. If I don't have to pay anything and I get paid for it.
My question would be, is it hot? My kid touches it, is he going to burn their hand?
Yeah.
Is it loud? Do you hear the fans running? And so it sounds like a really loud air conditioning unit. But assuming it was relatively silent and safe, yeah, I'd be down. Now, I'd really be down if I could hook into it. You can use it, but I want to have some insane amount of local inference. So I don't have to have this $100,000 or $25,000, whatever's going to cost CPU or computer sitting in I can just go plug into the thing outside my house that has the capabilities. I think you'd get a lot of people, if they could get their own inference, a certain allotment of it, I think they'd be open to do it. And I don't know if this is true or not, but Rosh says that unit is exploding in Nashville.
Exploding in terms of?
And Rosh clarifies, house on fire. All right, let's talk about OpenAI. This is from OpenAI on X. It says, Windows users, this one's for you. Computer use now works on Windows, so Codex can take action on your Windows computer. And with Windows support for Codex in the ChatGPT mobile app, you can start, review, and steer tasks on the go while work continues on your Windows machine. You don't have to feel left out anymore. OpenAI also announced basically private MCP servers, handshaking, OpenAI products. Your team can keep MCP servers inside your network while ChatGPT, Codex, and the Responses API connect through outbound-only HTTPS. So you can essentially use ChatGPT and other OpenAI products with your private MCP server. So if you're an enterprise, you can now do that. Let's talk about some other coding agent news. Dynamic workflows came to Claude Code. So Claude writes an orchestration script on the fly, then spins up a large fleet of coordinated sub-agents in parallel to take on your most complex tasks. A lot of people, I think, were asking, how is this different from a goal? It sounds like, the biggest difference is it tries to write more deterministic code and then runs that code in parallel. And so it's the idea that maybe not everything should be deterministic. It's almost kind of like a code mode of sorts.
Yeah, definitely. I gave this a spin. So I had it do an audit task in the code base. And what it does is it thinks about it in a deterministic way, iterate through files. For each file, do X task. For the sum of the results, then run it and summarize. And then, you have a workflow at the end of the day. The downside, I think, is if your task is large, it's going to optimize for doing things in parallel. So, for example, if I have 1,000 files in my code base, the array of files is an array of files, and then each file work on the for each is an agent call. And so now you have 1,000 agents running in parallel, which, more token usage and things like that. It's designed for parallel work. I did this. I saved the workflow. I looked at the code. It looks very similar to another workflow syntax that I'm very familiar with. You have a pipeline, which is your workflow. And then within each step, it's just JavaScript. And then you have an agent function, which just passes what it needs to do. And then that's it. It's pretty cool, pretty straightforward.
Speaking of dynamic workflows, now Pi introduce Pi dynamic workflows, and it says this is probably going to be bigger token burner than Pi goal, but dynamic workflows is the first implementation of sub-agents that I don't hate. This is from Michael Lives. Dynamic workflows are popping up. Unrelated, but Cognition came out and announced, and I think there was some speculation around this a couple weeks ago, but they've raised over $1 billion at a $26 billion valuation. So they've been on a tear, and they've officially announced that they've raised a lot of money at a huge valuation jump. XAI announced grok-build 0.1 is now available via the XAI API in public beta. This is the same model that powers the grok-build CLI and excels at agentic coding. Peter Steinberger came out and said that he's been teaching Codex to be his QA assistant. So for every commit, it creates a user test scenario and uses web VNC, CrabBox, computer browser use using Peekaboo and MC Porter to test OpenClaw like a user QA person would. This runs in the background and opens PRs with fixes. This is why he's burned so many tokens.
Yeah, dude. I use Peekaboo, and that thing burns tokens.
But you can start to fast forward on, okay, look at the cost curves going down with these open models. Imagine you could do this and you didn't have to spend $1 million a month because the open models continue to get cheaper. I still do think, and I think you realize this quite a bit, I've realized this, you still can't trust it, right? Yeah. But if you look at it from enough different angles, the theory is you'll be able to catch more things that even you would have missed.
Yeah, I got burned this weekend. Models are trained. I think the reward function is test passing. So they'll just make up tests that pass.
And that's why you need another agent that its goal is to validate and judge if this is a good test and if the PR has other risks. I mean, that's why you do need, I would argue, for every one model, one token you spend writing the code, we're going to be spending 10 tokens reviewing the code. This is from Kua. Today we're bringing Kua driver to Windows, so background computer use for any agent. Claude Code Codex on your own loop can drive real Windows apps through CLI or MCP while your desktop stays usable with true multi-synthetic pointer support. You tested out Kua for Mac, right?
Yep, it's pretty solid.
Let's talk about continual learning. So this is from Elad Gil, kind of a big name investor. It says the events of the last 6 months in technology are arguable amongst the most important in human history. The tools now increasingly exist for recursive self-improvement of models and agents. I think this is like Karpathy's like auto research proved this, and some other things that we're starting to see. But Elad goes on and says, we are likely in very early liftoff and exponential, and it's largely unnoticed outside of tech. So you could argue, is this just VC, pontificating potentially? But I think he's actually right here. There is something. Swix also had this kind of funny, but also very true post that says every evals and analytics startup is going through a one-time generational upgrade into a continual learning platform in 2026. Many will fail, but as always, the tasteful ones win.
This will be the new company in 2027. As we saw all these coding agent companies come out, now it'll be the continual learning companies.
Right here. Here we go. So the first one that we've seen, and we'll see more, what you're going to see is the observability providers. A few of them are going to make the jump and be good. And there will be some new entrants that also are competitive. So this is a company called Trajectory.ai. It says Trajectory is the platform for continual learning. Trajectory turns real product usage into AI that continuously improves. You also see this, Hermes agent's ability to write its own skills, right? It's this idea that an agent that continues to evolve, a system that continues to improve. And I think this is the new frontier that people are chasing. And so you're going to see a lot of companies fail, but you'll also see some, I think, actually succeed.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of open source continual agent frameworks that are being written. Obviously Langsmith has their version of this, Raindrop, etc. So do you think, so here's a question. If you're an observability company and you don't do this, are you out of business soon?
I think it becomes table stakes, yeah. You have to do it. And then the ones that can't do it well are going to lose. I think what you'll realize is that if you have used observability at any level of scale, it's no longer tenable to look at the traces and things yourself. It's a data problem. You have so much data. How do you actually use that to improve your agent? Well, before the thought was, someone that's, the prompt engineer can look at the data and come up with how the prompt should change. But I think that was a temporary point in time where you'll still have people who are good at that, but they need help from systems that can read and analyze data at a larger scale than a human can. All right, we're in the quick hits section. We're going to rapid fire through these last ones. Friend of the show, Adish, announced Motion Studio, premium launch videos creatively directed and produced end-to-end using our own video agents at a fraction of the cost and time of a traditional agency. So Mosaic is the product, but they're also realized that they built this really cool tool and they can actually just use it to help companies who don't want to learn how to use their tool, even though it is pretty easy to use. I've used Mosaic quite a bit. They'll do it for you. It's almost like an FDE model for and Motion Studio. But they'll build you a motion video for much cheaper because they're just using their video models and they're experts in how to use it. This is from Sue Kim, and it says, AI is making kids dumber. It should be making them geniuses. Introducing Koji, the first AI tutor that gets kids to actually think. And this is a really cool video. It was very well done. So if you have kids, if you want to figure out how to not just have them cheat using AI in ChatGPT and actually use it to learn, because I think there's a difference. There's kind of people who will use AI to get smarter, and there will be people who use AI to just kind of get things done quickly and not actually understand what's happening. If you want your kid to be in the former group and they're actually learning based on the video, looks awesome. Of course, I haven't tested it, right? My daughter's a little too young, I think, but eventually I would want something like this. So this kind of stuff really does interest me. Asana, they're still around, acquires no-code agent builder Stack AI. I think we've met the Stack AI folks a while back, right?
Yeah. When we were in YC, we saw them like talk at an event. They are, they were a builder version of this stuff.
And the idea is they probably want to bring some of that to Asana. I'm assuming Asana's trying to stay in the agentic game, trying to be relevant.
Asana managed agents.
That's coming soon. Corgi raised $106 million at a 2.6 valuation since announcing their last round 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
And then they went on to say how the entire team works 7 days a week in the office.
And that Nico sleeps at the office and has a mattress there. And that caused so much drama. If y'all haven't seen it on X, I would go look at it. There are many notable people who got involved in the conversation.
The Linear CEO came out and said, this is ridiculous, basically. Like, I'm paraphrasing, of course. You read it yourself. I don't know.
David was in there, of course. David Kramer.
David Kramer came on and said, I've never worked, I would never ask my employees basically to work 7 days a week.
The funniest stuff, though, from this, so Kari and Nico had like a spat, right? So Nico was like, I imagine the Manhattan Project was not just a 1 day a week thing. And then Kari's like, yeah, I figured selling insurance is as important as making a nuclear bomb. So yeah, good luck. I hope there's no spillage or something.
Yeah, we'll check back in 7 years or something.
Back in 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that too. I was like, that's a pretty bold comparison to compare business insurance to the Manhattan Project, in that what you're doing is as important to the world. Now, business insurance arguably is pretty important. Like, you need it. It can save you. I think it's an important pursuit. But comparing it to that, I think, is a little bold. But also, I saw some posts on people saying, like, but if you are a VC, don't you want your founders to be this level of, like, ambitious and, maybe slightly delusional, but also, like, have delusions of grandeur, right? Like, they're thinking that what they're doing is some of the most important work. And it's, again, these are sound bites, right? So you got to take it. Like, I'm sure these are the extremes, right? But I don't know. I can't imagine a world where you can build a company long-term, maybe for short periods of time, where you're asking all your employees to be in the office 7 days a week. Now their social time is just going to be spent in the office. So I don't know how much more productive they actually are. Are you trying to build culture, or are you really trying to build a cult? Because the only way you're getting people in there 7 days a week is if you have built a literal cult where they buy in and they
marry each other.
They marry each other. They're going to eat, sleep, and breathe this thing. They don't have kids, because you can't have kids and work 7 days a week in the office. Like, maybe there's a few employees that have it. I don't know how they pull it off, but maybe they have to take a bunch of vacation because they are 7 days a week, so they get a bunch of vacation time. I don't know how they pull it off. I don't know how it scales long term, but it'd be interesting to watch from the sidelines.
I had a tweet response, or I just did a tweet that the Corgi founders liked. I just said it's like the right answer is whatever it takes. So if that's 7 days for you, good for you.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think every company culture is different. The nice thing is, like, hopefully, if you're picking where you want to work, you could, if that sounds good to you and you're that, you want to invest your life into something, I would just argue, make sure you're getting paid, not just in stock. Like, make sure it's worth, the juice is worth the squeeze, because the stock, you never know where that's going to go. Stock's a lottery ticket. Even in the best companies, you never know. Like, what if the regulations on insurance change?
Make sure you get paid in Daytona cold brews from the Corgi Cafe.
All right. Google Gemma introduced the new Coral board for efficient on-device AI. We've talked about local models and such earlier, but it can do onboard speech translation, natural language, controlling hardware, vision and sound, generating music. We've been talking to some other folks as well on just like, what does on-device AI look like? How do you get local models? How do you build agents that can run on these smaller chips, these smaller systems? It's cool to see. It's like the Raspberry Pi for AI.
And then it'll be on Android devices.
Cloudflare is working on web search, giving AI agents and workers real-time access to the public web. So I'm assuming they're going to be competing with Exa, Firecrawl, all the usual suspects.
Google,
here. Google as well. And then this is from Farza at Farza TV. This got a lot of attention just because it's a really well-done demo, but it's also pretty cool. So it says, watch me control my computer with just my voice. This is the future of operating systems, no hands. GBT Real-Time 2.0 is very, very underrated. So I'd encourage you to watch the demo, but essentially he's able to talk to his computer. I think it's called like Clicky. It's the product is called like Hey Clicky or something.
Yeah.
But it's able to talk to his computer, pull up Spotify, play music, tell it to do a bunch of stuff, and it's just in real time, pretty accurately just doing whatever he's saying, which is pretty wild. All right, we'll end with the GitHub star party, which we do once in a while. So this is from Dax. Rift is the repo, and essentially it is a better alternative to Git work trees. So the cool thing about this is, and it does say experimental, so take some caution, of course, but it's copy on write, which means you're not creating an entire clone of the Git repo, or the branch, right? If you're using a Git work tree, you might notice that you're chewing up a ton of hard drive space. This is going to ideally be faster, and it only copies when you actually save the file. So if you have tens of thousands of files in a repo and you're only changing a couple, you don't have to duplicate all those files. It's a cool idea.
Yeah, dude, my disk space is cooked. And that's because I have not been hygienic about getting rid of work trees. And the more work trees you have, the exact same copy of your repo, which could be fat, especially if you npm I, right? The minute you npm I in a work tree, you're cooked.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about, you have dozens or hundreds of work trees where you've installed a ton of dependencies. Dang. It's
a dwarf star of storage being sucked up.
So maybe this will help, still early, but go give it a star if you're interested. And while you're there, go to Mastra-AI/Mastra, give us a star. To end this thing, we had a moment where we got some GitHub stars. We like a few more. We would like a few more, of course. Let me find the post, because I think this is a good thing to end on. Before we show that, go ahead and like, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, give us that 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We do appreciate that. Only the 5-star reviews. Follow us on X at Mastra. Follow me at smthomas3. Follow Abhi at Abhi Iyer. This was the post from Sam, the other co-founder of Mastra. But yes, we finally surpassed Vercel AI, which, again, it's GitHub stars, but it's fun. Go give us a star. We like it.
We want to keep our lead.
Yeah, it feeds our ego, help us out here. We do appreciate that. So thank you for tuning in to Agents Hour. We appreciate you watching the show or listening after the fact. We'll be here next week, like always.
Peace.